This is the second panel, and this is the fourth of 6 Shifting the Lens presentations. My name is Evelyn Chambers, and I am the coordinator of community leadership and development along with Safe Communities with United Way for the City of Kawartha Lakes. And certainly it's my pleasure to have been asked to help to moderate tonight's panel discussion. If anyone knows me, they know that sharing quotes is certainly a favorite of mine, and I couldn't help but find one that I think speaks to your involvement. This is from Margaret Mead. She once said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." And certainly, I believe that your participation in these sessions can be the change for our community and certainly for our very valued seniors, which is the topic tonight. One other group that has asked to be acknowledged, and certainly we appreciate the work that they're doing while they're not represented here tonight as part of the panel. They certainly are very active in the community in helping seniors age well, and that is the Haliburton Kawartha Pine Ridge District Health Unit. And I've been actually given a short kind of bio, if you would, on the organization to read out to you. So bear with me. The Haliburton Kawartha Pine Ridge District Health Unit is committed to helping seniors age well. One of our key projects is Age Friendly, where we partner with other community agencies and volunteers to create a healthy, active community for all. We envision a place that will provide policies, services, and supports that enable all City of Kawartha Lakes residents, and seniors in particular, to enjoy a better quality of life. The Age Friendly Steering Committee includes the Health Unit, Community Care for the City of Kawartha Lakes, the Kawartha Lakes Accessibility Advisory Committee, United Way for the City of Kawartha Lakes, Safe Communities Kawartha Lakes, and the municipality. Also within the smaller communities of Fenelon Falls and Omemee, there are committed older adult volunteers working on issues specific to their communities. If there is an interest, additional age-friendly community groups will be formed, with Bethany being our most recent area expressing interest. The World Health Organization has identified 8 theme areas with certain criteria that community must meet in order to be considered age-friendly. Those theme areas are outdoor spaces and public buildings, transportation, housing, communication and information, civic participation and employment, community support and health services, respect and social inclusion, and social participation. The Age Friendly Steering Committee and the local action groups have already had several achievements in many of these categories. We will continue to move forward towards our goal of achieving the World Health Organization Age Friendly Community designation by the end of 2015. We welcome the involvement of any persons who would like to help create a more age-friendly community. And you're asked to if anyone is interested, to contact Doreen Bolville, who at the Health Unit, and I have contact information here. Other Health Unit services for seniors include the annual flu clinics and cervical screening for women up to the age of 70 who do not have a health care practitioner. They also have information packages on healthy eating and quitting smoking. So on behalf of the Health Unit, certainly we're pleased to have them supporting and helping to make our community a much more age-friendly one for our seniors. First round of questions, each panelist will have an opportunity to respond to them. The second round of questions, the panelists can elect to respond to them or not. And then we're going to conclude the session, as I said again, with questions from the floor. So with that, I think we can get ready to start our discussion here tonight. And it's my pleasure to introduce tonight's panel members. So starting from my right and your left, we have Lisa Morass. Lisa is the Public Education Officer with the Alzheimer's Society here for the City of Kawartha Lakes. She's been in that position for 8 years, and she tells me that she's passionate about assisting people of all ages to understand dementia. And Lisa is also a very solid and great community supporter beyond what she does with Alzheimer's, the Alzheimer's Society. Next, we have Sherry McKean. Sherry is the Community Education and Outreach Representative for the Central East Community Care Access Center. Sherry's been in that position since 1998 and in a total has worked in the field in similar related positions and in similar agencies and names of the organization for 24 years. So certainly brings a wealth of information and expertise to our panel tonight. Turning now to my left and your right, we have Karen Anderson. Karen is the Elder Abuse Services Coordinator for Community Care here in the City of Kawartha Lakes. She's been in her position since 2008, and Karen is also part of a broader elder abuse network. And finally, we have Ryan Alexander. Ryan is the Health Promotion Coordinator for Community Care for the City of Kawartha Lakes. Ryan is a local to the City of Kawartha Lakes, completing his undergraduate and graduate degree at Brock University. He worked at Niagara Region Public Health as a health promoter before taking the opportunity to return home and to work with community care beginning in 2011. Passionate about living a healthy lifestyle, Ryan's work focuses on the prevention side of healthcare, the healthcare equation, by finding opportunities for people to enhance their health and their well-being. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is your panel tonight. How about a round of applause to thank them for coming out? So we're going to start and put our panel to work now. And just to begin our presentations, I'm going to turn to each panelist individually and just ask them to briefly outline the services that their organization offers to seniors. And if I could start with Lisa.
Sure. So the Alzheimer's Society provides services specifically in Kawartha Lakes here, and we do also cover Peterborough, Northumberland, and Haliburton as well. But what we do provide in all of our areas is support group. We provide formal and informal education, one-on-one groups. Our group also assists with system navigation, so helping people figure out which door to enter and how to get there from where they are. We connect people to other resources. Two of our newer programs are our Safely Home Medical Alert program, which helps people that have dementia, that have wandered away, be connected and found a positive way to get back home fast. And our new program that's going to be launching in Bobcaygeon that will align with the health unit is our dementia-friendly communities. That's about it in a nutshell.
Great. That's a big nutshell.
Mm-hmm.
Sherry.
So the Central East CCAC, or Access Center, we actually in 2007 amalgamated with 4 other CCACs, and now that's why we are now called the Central East CCAC. We have branch offices here in Lindsay, on just across from Lindsay Square in the Tim Hortons Plaza there, and we also have branch offices in Campbellford, Haliburton, Peterborough, Port Hope, Whitby, and Scarborough. The biggest program that we have, or that we offer, is our in-home services, which consists of nursing, therapy, which can include physiotherapy, occupational therapy, speech-language pathology, social work, and nutrition, as well as personal support workers, medical equipment, and supplies. So often when people are in hospital, they get discharged home to recover, they utilize our service to help them recover at home. We also have placement into long-term care, so we're the agency that determines eligibility for long-term care, helps people apply to the long-term care homes that they would like to live in, and do the bed offers when they become available. We also do information and referral, so if we do an assessment with someone, or someone calls in and needs to know or would like to know about another agency, we'll get them linked up with that agency. So we do a lot of referrals to the partners at this table on a regular basis. We also are system navigators. We have some very specific programs that have come under our basket of care in the last few years through either the Ministry of Health or the LIN, which is the Local Health Integration Network. Through the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care, we have the Healthcare Connect program. So if you know of anyone that does not have access to a family health care provider, physician, nurse practitioner, family health team, or other health provider, then give us a call and we can help start the process to get connected. And we actually have staff that make that connection happen. We have a direct funded program from the LIN called Living a Healthy Life with Chronic Conditions. So if you know of anyone who's living with an illness for the rest of their life and they would like to learn how to manage that illness a little bit better, we can get them connected with a free workshop. It's a series of 6 classes, and you get a great workbook with it, and I hear a lot of positive response. There's the general program, and then there's one now for chronic pain as well as diabetes. So if you know of anyone and their care partner that they might benefit from taking it, I do have some brochures at the back. And then we've got some really unique programs like our NP STAT program. So the NP STAT, NP stands for nurse practitioner, and the STAT actually is referring to providing care and long-term care. So the intent of that program is to prevent unnecessary transfers between long-term care and hospital, and making sure that the person living in long-term care gets the care that they need in a timely fashion. And the last new program to come to our area is the Community Palliative Care Nurse Practitioner. So we serve people from birth to end of life, and we do have a palliative care team, and now we also have this palliative care nurse practitioner that's part of that team that can help people die in their homes. So that in a nutshell is what we do.
Again, that's a very big nutshell. Thank you very much, Sherry. Karen.
So Ryan and I are going to jointly share the services that Community Care City of Kawartha Lake offer. And our services are designed to help seniors and people with special needs to remain as independently as possible in their own community throughout the city of Kawartha Lakes. And we have 4 divisions at Community Care. So we have our Community Health Center, we have our Hospice Division, we have our Community Support Service Division, and we have our Low Income Dental Clinic. And so it covers a wide range of services, and Ryan's going to speak to some of the specific programs that come under those headings.
Sure. So I guess one thing that I often try and take the opportunity to do is bring people up to speed with where community care is now. And Karen sort of touched on a little bit as to how we've evolved in the last, especially in the last 5 years or so. Community care has been around since 1985. Traditionally as a community support agency, but with the inclusion of the Community Health Center, which is a model of primary care that extends beyond just treating illness to also focusing on promoting a complete sense of health and well-being. That's evolved to include Hospice Kawartha Lakes, which you mentioned, which is the palliative and grief support side of the equation when people are closing in on the end of life. And then furthermore, the dental clinic, which is something that's not only available to seniors, but all age spans who are living on a low income. So there was a need identified for people to have access to oral health care, but weren't accessing it based on the cost. So this is a model that tries to make it more affordable for individuals who require oral health care by offering it at the Ministry of Community and Social Services fee guide. With all that evolution, we still do offer many of the community support services, such as the Meals on Wheels, Diners Club, Adult Day, that span all across City of Kawartha Lakes, and we're all 4 of those pillars of the organization do service all City of Kawartha Lakes residents. So I think we'll shed some light on more specific examples of the services we provide as we go on.
So the next question for our panelists is, in any group there are great variations. Please generalize and comment on what distinguishes seniors from other demographic groups. And I'm going to start with Sherry for that.
Great. So as I mentioned earlier, at the Central East CCAC, we do serve clients from birth to end of life, but the majority of our clients are seniors. People are living longer, and but with living longer, they're often developing more chronic health conditions and then more acute health conditions. What we've noticed in the past, quite a few years now, that the people, our clients, are coming to us when they're much sicker than they have been in the past, and that is the reason why we have developed a number of different programs like the Living a Healthy Life with Chronic Conditions to help people manage their illness in the community. And we work very closely with the local health integration network as well as our community partners on making sure that there are services that can be provided for people. So the biggest thing that we do is our in-home services, and we certainly do provide a lot of nursing and personal support. And as people, maybe their health improves a little bit after a hospital stay, but they still need a little bit of extra help to stay at home, then we're able to provide that personal support, maybe to help give them help with that activities of daily living, such as bathing, eating, getting dressed, toileting, that type of thing.
Karen?
I'm going to come at this from an elder abuse perspective as to what distinguishes seniors from other demographic groups. And when I go about the city of Kawartha Lakes, and I also respond to elder abuse up in Haliburton County as well, and I hear seniors talking, and I'll say, what makes a senior? What is a senior? And the answer I normally get back is, it just means we're 65. It doesn't mean anything else. We're just like everybody else. It's just that we now have those numbers 65 plus after our name. But seniors come with a rich history that younger people don't share. They have that rich history of perhaps serving our country in the war, a rich history of our community. And so those are wonderful gifts and strengths that they bring to our everyday life, as volunteers to community care. And we are a very strong volunteer-based organization, so having seniors amongst our volunteers, we could not do what we do without that. The other thing, especially with regards to elder abuse, is seniors of a generation are quite often, they grew up very trusting. A handshake was a word of honor. So you said you're gonna fix my roof for $2,000, let's shake on it. And this leaves them much more open to being vulnerable for abuse and abusive situations, is that wonderful trusting nature that they have, that a handshake was as good as your word. So those were just two of the areas that I wanted to highlight.
Great, thank you very much. Ryan?
Okay, so I guess what distinguishes seniors from other groups is, for me, seniors represent about 14 to 15% of the population. They represent the fastest growing demographic. They project in 2 decades from now that 14% will be closer to 30%, and so we're projected to double. And I guess what that means is that we need to be prepared for what that means for not only the health system, for other aspects of the community as well. But these seniors, they're our grandparents, our parents, our friends, our neighbors, and like Karen said, they bring a lot of skills, whether it be skilled work, caregiving, leadership, volunteerism. They're assets to the community, and I think Community Care's volunteer base speaks well to that because it's a very high percentage of the volunteers are from the senior demographic. So having said that, they are an asset, but reality says that they do represent about half of all healthcare spending. So that's sort of this wave as that population grows. We know that spending might grow with that, and we need to be prepared for that. So that's going to be a significant, challenge for us moving forward. So what this boils down to is that, in my mind, seniors are very diverse. They represent many different facets of the community, and I think can be an asset to the community as well.
Thank you. Lisa?
So as seniors relate to dementia, one of the biggest challenges I have when I was thinking about this question is dementia has no age. When I first started working for the society, we used to look at numbers of those over the age of 65. In the last short 8 years, we are looking at people that are younger and younger. We have people on our caseload that are in their 40s. So it's not just about seniors in our agency. You don't have to have an age qualification to be part of our society or come for service with dementia or as a caregiver. We have youth caregivers that come in as well. And when I think about 1 in 11 of us will know somebody with dementia, and 1 in 4 of us will have somebody in our own family that has dementia. And which is it? Is it dementia or is it Alzheimer's disease? Well, dementia is that catchphrase that takes into consideration all the 96 different types of dementia that are currently out there that we're studying. So when I talk about variations, it can be very, very broad. but it's about the people that we support. And we take each one of those journeys and treat it individual as it needs to be to provide the service and support that they need in their community as they want to stay.
Thank you. So we've heard now what our panelists believe distinguishes seniors from other demographic groups. Next question we have for our panel is, what are some of the significant challenges faced by seniors in the city of Kawartha Lakes? And I'll turn to Karen to begin that.
So when I think of significant challenges faced by seniors, a lot of these challenges are also faced by every age demographic in our region. And the first one that comes to mind with regards to seniors is they may have lived in Toronto all of their life, come to the cottage in the city of Kawartha Lakes. When it was time to retire, they winterized that cottage. They're living there now, and their children are scattered all across Canada, probably the States and further afield, and they're maybe not as aware of the services that are available in the city of Kawartha Lakes right now, and that's their home. So they were very comfortable knowing where everything was in Toronto or in Montreal or wherever they came from, but they don't know how to access the services that we have in the city of Kawartha Lakes. Their family is scattered. I think that's another big issue as we age, and if we do take on health issues, our children are living all over the world now. And so we may not have that hands-on person just living down the street from us. The other biggies are transportation. That comes up at every type of conference or panel as a challenge. Limited resources. We have seniors who are just living basically from pension check to pension check, and also housing, adequate housing. So those are the ones I came up with.
Ryan.
Yeah, I think I'll touch on some similar ideas there. And I don't think it comes to a surprise that although City of Kawartha Lakes is beautiful by what makes it up in terms of its geography, that can also pose a challenge when we get out into our rural areas. So like Karen said, whether it be someone who has moved here from the city or you're aging in your home that's not necessarily in the rural hub of either Lindsay, Bob Cajun, or Fenland Falls, just by the very nature of where your house might be, it might present challenges to accessing services. So I think one way that community care has tried to accommodate people living in some of those rural areas to provide them service is working with groups of volunteers in areas like Little Britain or out in Manila or Woodville, Kirkfield, what have you, because they can help to create services and programs that keep locals engaged and minimize, I guess, the barriers that might come with trying to access services in a more rural area, urban area.
Lisa.
So as Karen and Ryan both pointed out, affordable housing and transportation becomes quite a challenge, and again, not just to seniors, but probably across our age demographic. But some issues that we're starting to see and that are going to continue are the availability of long-term care beds that are limited for that senior who wants to move into that next environment to live, whether it's retirement or long-term care or even supportive housing. Not all seniors want to do that. Some of them want to stay at home in their own place for as long as they possibly can. And there's services there, many of us are at the table to help provide that, but it comes down to income after a while. The hours don't match the support that may be needed. And sometimes people think that they can handle at home a lot longer than they can, but there's a lot of other conditions or safety issues that we have to consider to keep everybody safe, not just that senior, but their community and their family as well.
Great.
So I would agree with Lisa. One of the big concerns is the availability of long-term care beds. One of the things I think that people, unfortunately, maybe they don't understand how to access a long-term care bed, and that we actually do have long wait lists for those beds. So they wait until there's a crisis and then have to rely on community support services to come to them in their home, which is for what we provide. We do provide a lot of that care in home. We do have something else called an alternate care setting, which is located right beside our Lindsay branch, and it's there for anyone getting a nursing intervention who is ambulatory and can have an appropriate intervention at the alternate care setting. But for the most part, any of our in-home services are brought to you in your home. But we can't provide service 24/7, and we do have maximums that we have on our service. So the unfortunate reality is, not just in this community, but in a lot of communities, people make up their mind they don't want to change the way they're living, and yet their health care fails them, and they need more support than what they realize, and before the system can react. And that's probably one of the biggest thing. Transportation is another issue. Sometimes caregivers need a break, and they could benefit from going to an adult day program so that their caregiver can recharge and regroup. But the issue is getting that person to an adult day program. So I'm going to say appropriate housing, because sometimes their healthcare needs aren't severe enough to make them eligible for long-term care, but living independently really isn't possible for whatever reason. You can't maintain your home, maybe you have a farm, you can't maintain what goes with it, so either an appropriate seniors apartment with the appropriate supports, or retirement homes, and sometimes people's income doesn't allow retirement living to be an option. So those are some of the challenges I see that seniors face.
Great, and it's quite a cross-section that I think our panelists have given us some fodder to think about. Next question is, what advantages do you think there is to living here rather than in a larger urbanized area? And Ryan, I'm going to look to you to start.
Clearly, I think there's advantages. That's why I came back from Niagara, like you mentioned, so I'll just put that on the table. I really do think that areas like City of Kawartha Lakes embrace the sort of neighbor helping neighbor mentality, and certainly that's a philosophy that community care is well rooted in, and sort of how the organization started back in 1985. And without the dedication of our volunteers and that mentality, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. So just to take a look at our last fiscal year, for example, we had 800 volunteers across the organization that provided 78 hours worth of service to carry, whether it be our transportation services or Meals on Wheels or our gentle exercise programs, our volunteer blood pressure clinics. I have to mention that because I see a volunteer in the crowd. Without that dedication and that willingness to embrace sort of that neighbors helping neighbors mentality, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. So I'm not going to say that they don't have that in a more urban setting, but I certainly think that's something that makes an area like this appealing.
I think Ryan was copying my notes. I too went away from here and moved back after school to raise my own kids, but also to be with family, because that family community is really, really strong and really is a present. Even when people from other places come from Toronto, they move here and they're like, we came here because we had a cottage here. We had really good experiences here. So that home feeling really stands strong. Even though we do have wait lists, ours are a little bit less than our big metropolitan areas. So, and people know people in the community, and I think that just helps foster that feeling of security and wealth and health, well-being and health.
Sure. So Ryan and Lisa took my answer as well. But I'm also going to mention that I think that people here know their neighbors, which makes a big difference. If you notice that Mrs. Smith normally walks her dog every day at 9 and 6, and she didn't today, you might, because you know your neighbors, you might knock on the door and say, "Hey, Mrs. Smith, is there something I can do to help? You're not feeling well today. Can I walk the dog?" And you generally don't have that feeling in a more urban setting where you don't know your neighbors. And I think that goes a long way. As well, we do have those strong community support agencies that I see in an urban setting. It often is a little bit different, but community care and the Alzheimer's Society in particular are two great community support agencies that that take care of their own, so.
Karen?
I came all the way from Montreal to live here in Lindsay. And I love it. I love City of Kawartha Lakes. And I put down sense of community, which is similar to what Ryan said, sort of neighbors helping neighbors, realizing that maybe something isn't quite right with a neighbor and maybe just going and finding out if everything's okay. There's that wonderful sense of community that we have, whether we live in Bobcaygeon or Dunsford or Colby. The other thing, and I have felt this firsthand on a personal level, all of our agencies, so Alzheimer and the Access Center and Community Care and some of the other agencies that might have volunteers or representatives here, we all work together to support a family or an individual who needs that support. And we work together as a team to come up with creative solutions, creative programs where we can all kind of work together. And a good example of this would, for instance, be the Heart Failure Support Group that runs in the City of Kawartha Lakes. And it's a joint effort between Community Care, the Kawartha Lakes Family Health Team, and the Ross Memorial Hospital. We've all come together and we've put on this great program that will benefit heart failure clients. So you see that a lot in the City of Kawartha Lakes, these wonderful partnerships. So,
Thank you. And I can't help but just echo what our panelists have said. I was born here, I'm still here, never moved away, but having worked across this province and traveled and had to seek help at various times when I was traveling, there's no place like home, and City of Kawartha Lakes has everything that has been spoke about, and the RAP program that you're speaking of, I think, is one of the things that we can take a lot of pride in. The next question for our panelists is, can you put a human face on this, and while respecting privacy, give us an example of someone your organization has helped? So we don't necessarily want names, but we want that image, we want the story of some way that your agency has helped an individual. And I would go back to Lisa to start this.
So I, at one point in time, had the opportunity to provide public education sessions upstairs at Loblaws. And I would go and do those sessions on a Monday night, and I never knew who was going to come to the room. Sometimes I had lots of people, and sometimes I didn't have very many people come. You know, sometimes when you have Alzheimer's disease on the top of the poster, people go, yeah, I don't think I want to go find out about that. However, one visit, I had a mother and a daughter come in to learn about what we call the overview of dementia. They sat through the presentation, came up to me after and said, we need some more information. We're concerned about their husband. I said, okay, so I gave them information. Off they went. 2 months later, the wife shows up with the husband, sits through nearly exactly the same presentation again. He comes up to me and says, I think I need some more information. And so I give him some information, thinking that's all well and good. About 2 months later, they come to the door. And we have a pretty open door policy at the Alzheimer's Society. You come on in, we're very hospitable. You have a cup of coffee with us, a tea, whatever, you know, because it takes a lot to get to that front door and get that door open and feel comfortable enough that you're not going to be judged on the other side of it. So in the husband and wife come, they sit down with one of the client support coordinator staff and have a conversation with them. Next thing I hear is that they're going to support groups. We have support groups for person with memory loss as well as caregivers. We offer them at the same time so that everybody's going to the same place at the same time. They do have lots of great discussions. This couple were the first to sign up for one of our new programs called the Step Out Walking Club. So they walk with other buddies through a couple of the parks in the summertime, which encourages, you know, that physical exercise, brain health, and just that social interaction with others. The gentleman had an accident and ended up in the hospital. The client support staff continued to visit with the wife and now the adult children because they're trying to figure out what the next steps are. And one of the biggest jobs she had was to try to help the family understand what was a result of the accident and what was a result of the dementia. So which things had to be figured out. Spent a lot of time going back and forth and trying to help them just figure out the system and what would be the best for their loved one. The family decided that they wanted to be really strong advocates and have advocated really strong for their dad, and he's doing amazingly and will probably get released from the hospital very soon. And we're still supporting. We are there as they need us on their journey. So it was quite from a casual meeting at Loblaws to some pretty intense family involvement in the end. It's an amazing story. One to continue.
And Lisa, I'm touched with the way you say it's a journey, because I understand it is just that, it is a journey.
Mm-hmm.
Sherry.
Okay, I'm going to use my person as Mrs. McKean. Well, it's not my mother-in-law, but we'll pretend it is. So Mrs. McKean was in hospital after a fall, and she broke her hip. She lives in a 3-story Victorian home. So while in hospital, she would have met with one of our hospital care coordinators. So we actually have staff that work in each one of the hospitals. If you or a loved one end up in hospital, please ask to speak with one of the care coordinators before you leave. So the care coordinator would have met with Mrs. McKean. They would have developed a care plan based on their discussion. So it's an individualized care plan. And Mrs. McKean, it was very important for her to come home and live at home. But while she was in hospital, there was some indications that maybe that she does have dementia. So, but we do try and support people to come home from hospital and see how well they're going to cope with their either recovery from illness or to see if they can cope with dementia. But Mrs. McKean lives alone. So she was discharged home from hospital. We provided some in-home services, so we provided occupational therapy to go in and make sure that she didn't have another fall. So we would do some different safety planning with Mrs. McKean. We would provide some physiotherapy so that she could strengthen her leg and hopefully not have another fall. And we also provided some personal support so that she could get help bathing while she was recovering. We would do another assessment so many weeks later to see how she was coping at home, so that a different care coordinator, one that is assigned to her community geographical region, would go in and see her in her environment and see how she was coping. And again, develop a care plan that would meet her needs for at home. And hopefully we'd be getting the family involved. They would be giving us their input on how she's coping as well. And if need be at that time, due to the dementia, we needed to start looking at placement into long-term care, we could start that conversation as well. Determine eligibility, and if she is eligible, get the family, Mrs. McKean and her family, to go and visit the homes and decide which homes that they would like to apply to. And as she was waiting for long-term care, we'd be able to provide some support to keep her safe at home.
Karen.
So my job at Community Care is the Elder Abuse Services Coordinator, and I receive phone calls, or people walk in, or people email me with concerns that they have that somebody that they know, maybe somebody that's a complete stranger to them, maybe they feel they themselves are the victim of abuse, and my job is to respond and to provide enough support and services so that they can take the next step in resolving that situation. So I had a phone call one day from a very nice lady, and she said that she was representing a group of neighbors, that one of the neighbors had witnessed an elderly person who lived across the street outside in winter, inappropriately clothed on one occasion. She didn't have boots on, she just had socks on, and she didn't have a coat on. And a second occasion witnessed the same elderly person outside with her adult son, and the adult son, she felt, handled or pushed and pulled his mother very roughly, and it made her uncomfortable. She didn't know what to do. She didn't want to interfere, but it just bothered her. So she got all of her friends in that community on that street together, and they just put on the pot of coffee and they just talked about the situation and what they were going to do. And they decided to call me because somebody had come to a talk that I had given, taken my business card and given me a call. So I was able to get a little bit more information, find out approximately how old this lady was, how long she had lived there, did they know what family she had, did they know if there was anybody else who went into the home, were there any animals, what were all of their concerns. And I took that information and I ended up, because there didn't appear to be any other family going into the home. Neighbors had tried to go over and the lady would not allow them into her home. I called the OPP. I have an officer at every detachment or Kawartha Lakes Police Service as well that I can call and talk to. And an officer went out and did a well-being check. And the job of that officer is to gain access into the home with that person's permission, because she has rights. She could say, absolutely not, you can't come into my home. But thankfully she did. He was able to go into the home, see if there was heat, if there was water, if there was food in the fridge, if she had any apparent bruising or distress to her body, if her animals were well fed, to find out if she had any other family or support system, did there appear to be any mental health issues. So a wide variety. The officer was able to determine that more than likely that this lady needed more help than she had right now, and that there was a potential that her adult son perhaps wasn't maliciously abusing her. However, he was stressed out as a caregiver and was losing patience and getting frustrated with his mother. And that she was at a point in her life where she didn't understand that she couldn't go outside in the middle of winter with just her socks on and just a light blouse. She couldn't make that differentiation. So the police officer contacted myself and we were able to get some services involved. One of them being the Access Center, and the lady agreed that she would like to have a case manager come out to her home and see if any of the support could be put into place for her. We were able to go and talk to her about, that neighbors would like to be of help to her. And so we were able to put a whole support network in place. We were able to offer her Meals on Wheels through community care. We were able to ensure that her animals were being well taken care of because there was a lack of food in the home. And she's able to stay in her home and be as independent as possible. And that, I find, was a great success story of everyone in our community working together as a team.
Great. Ryan.
All right. So I guess for anyone familiar with some of the conversations going on in the healthcare system, you'll know that integration is a big buzzword and there's a lot of attention being put on that right now. And by that I mean integrating services and looking at efficiencies for the system as a whole. And I guess I would argue that in the past 4 years, especially with the addition of some of the different facets of community care, we've been living this life of integration. So I'm just using that to preface my Mr. Smith story. And I already had Mr. Smith picked out before you were talking about Mrs. Smith earlier. So. In this scenario, Mrs. Smith has passed on, unfortunately, but I'll use the face of Mr. Smith. So Mr. Smith is someone who's lost his wife. He lives on low income and is a supportive housing client of community care. So there's different supportive housing buildings across in Lindsay and up in Fenland Falls, and we'll just say he's in supportive housing somewhere. Based on an assessment of his health needs, he's identified as a fairly complex client and didn't have a healthcare provider. Fortunately, through our community health center, because he didn't have a healthcare provider, he's been able to be linked up to a primary care provider through the CHC, which is Community Health Center, sorry for the acronym. And that was one of his main needs at the time because he didn't have that current healthcare provider. By getting him in touch with the Community Health Center, that opens up a whole other realm of possibilities to linking him to social work and dietitian and whatnot. But it was that link to the Community Health Center that was the first point of access that was required. Then coming back to the supportive housing end of things, once they had made that link, they recognized that he wasn't necessarily preparing sufficient meals and having proper nutrition. So, and he also didn't have family around to support him as much as he perhaps needed to be supported. So they linked him up again with Meals on Wheels, so that not only does that offer a proper, adequate meal, it's also sort of an informal check-in, a well-being check-in, which a lot of people sort of miss that facet to that program. So I guess in the grand scheme of things, he's been linked to primary care, offered some supportive programs through Meals on Wheels, and received some personal support services in the home. And just through speaking with the supportive housing manager, the comment that she had was, this is a perfect example of someone who would not be in their home without the support, would not be able to stay independent without the support that's provided. So that's how community care can sort of wrap around an individual, as well as use community resources when necessary.
Another great example of how RAPs actually work in our community.
Final question that all of our panelists are going to respond to is this. Given the diversity of services offered by each agency here on our panel, agencies can face day-to-day challenges in delivering programs, services, and support. How does your agency ensure that your senior clients' needs are met? Starting with Sherry.
So, one of the biggest challenges that we have is addressing needs versus wants. So myself as a, we're going to use Mrs. McKean as the example again, as the daughter-in-law who wants the best for her mother-in-law, I could call and do a referral to the CCAC and say, my mother-in-law needs service. But when we do the eligibility criteria, we determine she actually doesn't need service. I would like her to have service, but her healthcare needs don't make her eligible for service. And that's a hard thing for family members sometimes to reconcile. The other thing is right now with the funding the way it is, we have to waitlist some of our clients coming from specifically from the community. So even if my mother-in-law was eligible for service, we may have to ask her to wait if when we do a risk assessment we determine that her needs are not as great as somebody else's. So that we do have a wait list for definitely personal support and some therapies and all of our programs. So that's one of the biggest challenges that we have, especially when we know that somebody's eligible, they could use our help, and we have to ask them to wait a little bit for, not just a little bit, sometimes we have to ask them to wait for services. So, please know that we do reassess on a regular basis. We are constantly advocating with our funders to make sure that we get the level of funding so that all of our clients, whether they're senior or not, but particularly our seniors, are getting the care that they need that based on the eligibility criteria set out by the province.
Great. Karen, from your perspective.
So for community care, our goal is to ensure that all of our clients' needs are met. And like Sherry said, sometimes people want something that perhaps we don't provide or aren't able to provide they may not fit the criteria for the program. But we do have a very diverse number of programs that are for all age groups. And though we've talked a lot about seniors, at community care, for instance, we have children and teen grief support groups through our hospice division. We have children that we take to medical appointments. We have children who are benefiting from the Healthy Smiles program. So we sort of go from all age groups, and we provide a diversity of programs. I did put our brochure at the back, and it lists all 4 of our divisions, and it just gives the whole list. Because I know Ryan's got in quite a few of our programs, and I've tried to slip in a few as well. It's easier when there's 2 of us with one agency. We have a bit of an advantage, but it will show you the diversity that we can fit people's needs. And I've said this before, just the partnerships that community care has with other agencies in our community, and how we all work together to help and support a client. We have the best staff ever. I know you guys have the best staff too, but we have the best staff ever, and who will go out of their way to come up with a creative solution to an issue. And we also have the best volunteers ever. And we're always looking for new volunteers, and certainly you can give Community Care a call if you would ever like to inquire a little bit more about how to be a volunteer with our agency.
Great. Ryan, anything to add?
For me, this was a two-part answer. I think first, when we're saying, how do you ensure that you meet the needs of clients, I think involving clients in that conversation is a first and foremost, especially when you're developing a program, to have that insight rather than, for example, my interpretation of what this group needs is essential for program success. We've done that along the line. A perfect example is our low-income dental clinic. That wasn't just an idea that popped out of nowhere. There was lots of community consultation to make that happen. And I think after 2 years of running full-time, you can see that there truly is a need, and we're trying our best to meet it. So that involvement of that client population is important. And then the second piece that I'd touch on is the partnership between agencies. I think we're all in this together, and making sure that there's proper communication so that we're not duplicating services, and so that we're playing off each other's strengths and avoiding our weaknesses where we can. It'll help to ensure that we have good health outcomes for those that we're serving.
And Lisa?
So, we try really hard to tailor the services as a client comes through the door as to what they possibly need as it relates to what we are offering, and refer out to those partner agencies that you've already heard. I think a challenge that comes into place is trying to fit all the blocks into the right spots. With referring to other agencies, we all have a different referral process, and that can be very time consuming and gets very frustrating for a client or an individual that's having some difficulties understanding or has difficulties understanding time now. So that can be a real challenge for all of us to try to work through. And I think because we are a small community, sometimes the heads up call, really gets us moving a little bit quicker on some of those things.
Great. So I guess the one thing, I'm sitting here tonight and I guess two things come to my mind. First of all, I do have parents who are seniors, and yes, I live in the community, and yes, I'm available to help them. But hearing everything that's been said tonight, I guess the one question that starts to come to my mind is one of the questions that any of the panelists can respond to is, what should seniors do to advocate for themselves? So what is it that I can take from tonight back to my parents and say to them, here's what you need to be doing in order to really be helping yourselves and your fellow senior neighbors. Any of the panelists that would like to respond to that?
What came to mind with that question was seniors need to know their rights. You need to understand and appreciate that even though you're age 65 and over, that you have rights. And it helps to know that some of the rights you have are just living your day-to-day life. Some of them can be specific to if you live in a long-term care home. And I know you said you like quotes. And there is a Seniors Bill of Rights that was passed by the Ontario Legislature back in 2004 that still stands today. And it says the province of Ontario shall ensure that the following rights of seniors are fully protected and promoted. You have the right to be free from ageism, stereotyping, and other discrimination, and the right to be ensured that discrimination on these bases is not tolerated. You have the right to be free from abuse of all kinds, financial, physical, and emotional, and to be free from neglect and exploitation within their local community or in healthcare settings. And that's really an important thing to know. You need to have a voice. We have some very polite seniors who are saying yes, thank you, okay, all right. You have to have a voice and learn how to say no. If something doesn't feel right to you, if somebody is doing something to you that you don't like or makes you uncomfortable, or somebody is asking you. So for instance, if your oldest son who has a drug habit asks to come and move back home, you have the right to say no. And you need to find that voice, and that will protect you. from ever being the victim of abuse.
Anyone else want to?
Well, I think Brian said it, and I know Sherry made a comment to it, and our program also offers prevention and health wellness programs. And I think sometimes people get to the point of age 65 or even older and say, oh, I don't need to do that stuff. Well, we do need to do that stuff. It helps all of us take better care of ourselves. And even though we may be involved in different groups, diabetes, it doesn't matter. We're all talking about the same 4 principles of health wellness. So it's really just a positive to be preventative and be on top of your health.
I guess our parents weren't too far off when they used to teach us that an ounce of prevention was worth a pound of cure. Yeah.
And I was just going to say, don't be afraid to ask for help. I think that's one of the things that I've noticed the most with seniors is they don't necessarily want help, or they're afraid to ask for help because they're not sure what strings come with that. So my advice always is when you're working with your care coordinators to be open up front and honest, and then we'll look for solutions on how to address your issues or needs. So don't be afraid to ask for help.
Which is a perfect segue into the next question, because I'm sitting here, as I said, I have, my parents are seniors. I happen to be an only child, so the responsibility as they age for me to care for them is going to fall squarely on my shoulders. And so this next question is a nice segue in there. What is the role of family, particularly adult children of seniors, in supporting the seniors? And the follow-up to that is kind of a two-parter, and so you can choose how you wish to respond. What supports are there for middle-aged adults, that would be me, who have become caregivers for elderly parents? I am looking for some help here. You said to ask for help, so I'm asking for help.
Well, unfortunately, one of the challenges I often see is there's not enough help for caregivers. So if it's somebody taking care of somebody who has dementia, I always make sure that they're connected with the Alzheimer's Society, because they actually have funds to help with caregivers. But for the most part, our system right now is very reactive to health care needs for the person, not necessarily their loved one. The one thing that the CCAC is offering right now that caregivers can take part in is that Living a Healthy Life with Chronic Conditions course. And it helps the person, the caregiver, maybe look at the person's disease a little bit differently and helps them approach things more as a team. But one of the things when politicians come, when I'm at a health fair and they ask me about, what's one thing that, we can do to help, my comment often is we rely an awful lot on caregivers, unpaid caregivers within the community, family members, to support people living at home independently. So we should be developing some programs to help those caregivers.
Great.
And I'll say one thing that families and caregivers need to be cognizant of is their own health needs as well. I've witnessed it firsthand as to someone providing, sort of supporting their loved one in a caregiving role, and you can burn out very quickly. And without taking care of yourself, you're not helping anyone. So I know from a community care standpoint, some of the programs and services that are available can help in that caregiving role, whether you tie them directly to caregiving or not. And we've mentioned some of them already, like a Meals on Wheels. Perhaps you live in Montreal and your family lives here. It's that informal check-in where you know that volunteer, if something isn't right, there's going to be a call to the individual and a check-in. An adult day program which provides respite care for caregivers is also, those are available across City of Kawartha Lakes, as well as a more formal caregiver support group. You can learn from your peers who are going through at similar and different stages to you, and I think that lived experience is invaluable, and be able to share that amongst your peers.
Evelyn, one piece of advice I give you with your parents, ask them first.
Yeah, I don't want to get disinherited. That could happen.
Which I think sometimes as adult children, we try to do for our parents rather than saying, what would you like me to do for you?
It's good advice. Great.
The last thing that I would bring up is if you're an adult child and you are taking care of your parents, ensure that their power of attorneys are completed and that not only does your parent understand what your role is as their power of attorney, but as the power of attorney, you understand your role so that you don't take advantage of your parent. And there's two separate types of power of attorney. I have copies of these brochures at work, and if you're interested, you can just email me or give me a call, and you can just drop by and pick them up for yourself, or you can go online and download them. So this would be an important component as well, especially if you are the caregiver.
Great advice.
Everybody should have those.
Yes.
And with that, I thank everyone for coming out, for your attention, and a safe journey home.
Thank you.